Welcome to Wrasslin Raw!
All right, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Raw became war and Attitude ruled. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
And the hot dog guy just got it.
No.
Joe Giamateo.
X-Pac or X-Lax, whatever the hell your name is.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett. We're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw is War at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on May 4th, 1998. This Raw was recorded at the Richmond Coliseum in Richmond, Virginia, and features Jim Ross, Jerry the King Lawler, and Michael Cole on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. This started with another replay of Austin nailing Vince McMahon in the dome with a steel chair, but also updated the story with last week's developments, namely McMahon nailing Jerry Briscoe with the championship belt.
I love the shotgun sound effect they add every time the belt hits him.
Something that I really appreciated about this recap was the even balance between Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler sound bites in the voiceover. Like, I want as much of that duo as I can get when we're rehashing past events. The commentary is what makes all of the rehashing okay, in my opinion. After the proper intro, the show started with another installment of The Love Shack, except rather than Dude Love, we got Mick Foley kind of addressing himself as such. He doesn't directly say it, but commentary does it for us. Mick ripped into a great promo about how he doesn't even know who he himself is anymore. Mick was pissed off that he didn't get that rematch. Goldust did, and Mick even rightly pointed out that Goldust wasn't even in the championship picture when he was assigned that match. On top of it all, Mick has been assigned a hardcore Falls Count Anywhere match against Terry Funk later this evening. And Mick had a lot to say here. He presented an itemized list, in fact, with the final point being the apparent death of Dude Love. Mick refused to wear the tie-dye ever again. Mick did call himself Cactus Jack, though, when he called out Vince McMahon, who stepped on out to a chorus of boos. Once Mick cleared the air, it was Vince's turn on the mic, and we got a nice, "Who the hell do you think you are?" As a matter of fact, we got a fantastic tirade out of Vince in response to Mick. Vince went so far as to suggest that Mick murder Terry Funk live on television here tonight. And Mr. McMahon slapped Mick as a period at the end of that statement. But the glass broke, and Stone Cold Steve Austin came out to chase McMahon down the ramp, trashed the Love Shack set, pulled down all the scenery. He punted the inflatable chairs out into the crowd. And that is more or less where this wound up when we broke to commercial. So guys, we got another hot start to the episode. And part of that were these lengthy quality promos from both Mick Foley and Vince McMahon. These were both engaging, believable. They were deeply story-driven. This was fantastic shit, pal. And of course, you can't fault anyone for getting some cheap heat from the crowd with the random Austin entrance that went nowhere. Joe, what'd you think of how we started the evening here?
Did I hear you say lengthy?
There it is. So gross.
There it is.
Yep, first introduction of that.
Yeah, and that's a great sound clip. And we have a fourth face of Foley here, like you mentioned. Mick Foley, I think he claimed he was Cactus Jack, you said, maybe?
Yes.
At one point.
Too,
Yeah, he switched to Cactus.
So he's a little confused. He's switching back and forth now, which is cool. This is full-blown Mr. McMahon in the way that he was talking. He was just using the Mr. McMahon voice the whole time. And then Stone Cold Steve Austin comes out and roid rages. And this was fun to see. Again, this is the lead story right now. It's still the lead story. These three guys, Mick Foley, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Mr. McMahon. We're going to keep enjoying this every week, so this is a hot way to start the show. And Ryan, you may want to keep your fingertip on the friendship soundbite tonight, because I feel like we might get a little bit of friendship later on.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this segment just like you guys. I thought everyone involved did great. Mick came out first here as Mick Foley. It was cool to finally meet that fourth and final face of Foley there. And to learn he's going to have a no-holds-barred match with Terry Funk, that's always exciting with his friend. Let's not forget they're friends. But he doesn't want to do it. He's tired of the dude love stuff. He says he's in it for himself now. He's not doing it for the chicks anymore. And Vince McMahon comes out, and it is just textbook Mr. McMahon. He turns on the McMahon voice, talking about ripping the heart out of the chest of your friend and hold it above you as the blood drips down on you. Like, he went over the top like only Mr. McMahon can. And then the explanation mark with the slap. And the pep talk worked. Mick was ready to kill his friend, and right when it looked like Mick was about ready to boil over, Stone Cold comes out with like a spy movie grappling hook that he throws up over the micro bus and rips it down. The crowd got a huge pop though, and that's what this is about. Let's just set something up so Stone Cold could come out, ruin it all, and get the crowd to pop for it. And it works every week so far.
Yeah, and if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it.
Yeah.
So
keep making that money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that in mind, going off of the pattern of last week, let's go into our first match of the night. The Nation, Owen Hart and The Rock defeat Farouk and Steve Blackman by pinfall in 6 minutes and 18 seconds. I liked at the start of this, Commissioner Slaughter sending the rest of the Nation back to the locker room. That was good. A little bit of gumption from the commissioner there. And we did get dangerously close to friendship, though, with Michael Cole saying that Farouk and Steve Blackman were there to avenge their friend Ken Shamrock, whose leg got snapped last week, let's not forget. I have to say that I didn't quite care for Owen and Blackman at the start of this. It looked and felt like Owen was letting Blackman get his shit in, if you will. Farouk hit an amazing looking pile driver on The Rock. That shit was beautiful. That was like poetry in motion of a pile driver. I think the only pile driver I've ever seen that looked better than that was probably something that Jerry Lawler did. Michael Cole, he's calling The Rock a blue chipper now, so that's good. A little bit of JR rubbing off on him.
Just spitting facts.
The finish came fast, though. Double J Jeff Jarrett ran down while referee Tim White was distracted, pulling Blackman's head down on the ropes to set Owen up for the enziguri, giving Owen the pin and the win. Tennessee Lee raised Double J's arms in victory, and that's where this ended. So just to throw it out there up front, I actually really loved this match. I thought it was well worked. It was just an okay update to the stories, I thought, but for me it was all about the action. I didn't have many notes because the match was just like relentless in its pace, and it did a great job of keeping my attention. Joe, what'd you have on it?
I thought this was cool because this is Owen Hart officially in the Nation. He joined it last week, but this is the first time that he's coming out here with a match as a Nation member. And JR tells us that they're not wasting any time. Owen is a co-leader of the Nation with The Rock.
Footing.
So, yeah, that's cool to hear. And I thought Owen Hart and The Rock made a great tag team together. They were jumping in a lot and breaking up counts and that sort of stuff. I thought it was really a good dynamic between the two of them. We've seen Owen in other tag teams, like with British Bulldog and Yokozuna. But this one stood out to me a little bit more. I thought they looked really good together. Michael Cole, I get confused a lot on firsts that we hear. He called it the People's Elbow. I'm assuming he's already called it that before, but...
Yeah, I think we've heard it called that.
Yeah. So there were a couple times during this match where I thought I was watching a modern day match. There was a lot of kicking out of finishers, like the People's Elbow and the Dominator.
Well, so that's been the thing about the People's Elbow. It has not been used as a finisher yet.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
I think every time it's been used, it's just been a run-of-the-mill move that someone kicks out of.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this. I just enjoyed the team of Owen Hart and The Rock. And when Tennessee Lee is raising Double J's hand in victory, that's a victory for all of us.
Yeah. I totally agree. I enjoyed this match. I thought everyone involved worked well, and especially that team of The Rock and Owen Hart. They looked really great. They let us know that Kenny broke 2 bones in his leg from that Pillmanizing from last week. It is a shame, and I understand they don't use that anymore because he died, but it was such a great term when they would use that every time someone did that with the chair. But so I'm sad that's gone. Also, not like a whole lot of notes, just sitting back enjoying the story and wrestling between all these people involved. And unlike you, Bartlett, though, I hated Michael Cole calling him a blue chipper. It felt like he was ripping off JR. And like, I hope JR ripped him an asshole in the fucking commercial break. Like, what the fuck you doing taking my lines and quotes? That's what I say, blue chipper. Find your own goddamn catchphrase, you little twerp. You fucking pencil neat geek. And you also didn't like Owen working with Blackman to where I thought it worked fairly well. It was clear Owen, the better wrestler, was walking Steveman through, but who else better to do it than Owen Hart? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess maybe it's just Blackman needs to start getting caught up a little quicker.
Yeah. Really, I think that's what it is, and I've mentioned it before, the karate gimmick, I'm sure it kicks all kinds of ass. It's just, it loses a little something in translation.
It's almost like it's holding him back a little bit.
Yeah.
Leaning too much into it.
And I think the word you've used a couple weeks ago is the perfect one. He looks wooden in there. He just looks wooden.
Yeah.
So, hopefully that gets a little bit better. But all in all, a pretty entertaining match that I thought did its job that it was supposed to do. Keep me entertained and invested in this story.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of, that kept going after the match, because next up we got a beautifully touching tribute to Gerald Briscoe. This was practically a eulogy in how saccharine it was. But it's just to cap it off. It included footage of Jerry there with his wife and children wanting to publicly thank the greatest man in the world, the man to which Gerald Briscoe owes everything he has, Mr. McMahon.
The fact that he ended it with McMahon just put it over the top.
He could almost spin it into the Sid. He could say, "Thank you, Mr. McMahon."
I just thought it was so great. This and it was narrated by Vince McMahon, of course. So that was followed by the first ever video package for Edge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was really cool because I don't remember his beginnings in the WWF at all. The first memories that I can call of him are with the Brood.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah.
I know he was before that. I knew he came in before it, but
not long because we're not terribly far from that.
Yeah. I remember him doing singles stuff, but I mostly I don't remember it at all. I remember him in the Brood.
Yeah.
But that was really cool. That almost made me, it reminded me of a video game cutscene from back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or I put down a 90s or early 2000s edgy movie. I don't know, almost like The Crow or Matrix type of a cut up. Yeah, it was a good job. It looked very modern for that day.
Yeah.
What I had for it is that it was great because to me, at least, it was really ambiguous in its meaning. It didn't promise too much or it didn't assert too much about what or who Edge is, but it was also edgy. Perfectly edgy.
It was definitely edgy. And his name, though, made me wonder, is the next pay-per-view, is it about his debut? Because it's called Over the Edge.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know that they would devote the name of a pay-per-view.
That was what I was thinking, but it's an odd coincidence that
it is.
Edge is the name of the pay-per-view and we're debuting a new character called Edge.
Well, they really wanted to call it Over the Top.
Hopefully we get more of those in the next couple weeks because that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Next up after that, D-Generation X coming down to the ring. I think Triple H is testing out ways to get the crowd hyped up. He uses the "let's get ready to suck it" thing, and that's entertaining, but I don't think they've really figured out that all they really need is the Road Dogg. The Road Dogg does the perfect job the first time, every time. Unfortunately, though, once the New Age Outlaws got on the mic, they addressed the Disciples of Apocalypse, keeping that bullshit alive. And speaking of some bullshit that's still alive, LOD2000 came out.
Double dose of it.
What a mess.
A bit of a verbal joust there that got pretty old pretty fast, with the ultimate and, again, unfortunate news that DX will be taking on LOD2000 and the DOA in an 8-man tag match tonight. After a weird WWF promo featuring a beer-chugging WWF logo.
And burping.
Got a recap of the Paul Bearer revelation from last week with a really odd techno backing track behind it. And that's where this segment ended. So, we got that beautifully done piece of work with Jerry Briscoe kissing Mr. McMahon's ass, Edge's video debut, and which we've mostly talked about those, but really the disappointment that is the 8-man tag match. Ryan, did you have anything?
I'll just briefly talk about the Gerald Briscoe thing. That was fantastic. I loved it. Briscoe pretty much owed his entire existence of living to Mr. McMahon. So that was funny. Talked enough about the Edge thing. I already made my points there. Excited to see him, though. That's really cool. DX addressing the Nazi fuck brothers. DOA then bringing out fucking LOD. Like, nothing about this works. The only thing I enjoyed was during Triple H when he was doing his extended suck it part, X-Pac behind him had his tongue out and he's making this hand motion like he's shoving someone's face into his junk. And it was just so lewd. Just a bunch of fucking degenerates out there. So that got me going, but everything else about this, pretty forgettable.
Lewd, just like this show.
Yeah.
This podcast. Jerry Briscoe, I gotta say, during these days when we were watching, we were teenagers, I didn't give a shit about the older guys. Like when they would bring them in, I was just like, I don't know who this is. But man, did they really do a great job of highlighting Jerry Briscoe during these days. And he's just the perfect stooge. I just loved that at the end with his family. He's got his whole family there. He was like holding a kid or something, right? Like it was just so great. It looked like a political ad or something.
Mm-hmm. Or a Lex Luger Thanksgiving message.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, by the Christmas tree and
the fireside chat.
The fireside chat. We talked about Edge. Edge just has a great look during this time, and what a great, perfect video with him like in the subways and stuff. That was cool. DX, I agree. Road Dogg is clearly the mic guy in the group, and the others are still trying to find their way around that mic. The Road Dogg comes out and basically does the same thing every time, but Triple H is trying to do different things, and it's just not working really well, I don't think, right now. But yeah, my God, 8-man tag. What a time to change the channel.
Yeah.
Take a little break, take a shower or something, like whatever you got to do.
At least DOA isn't getting a shot at the belt. At least that got snatched away from him.
Right.
You're right. Talk about shitting on all of the goodwill that got built up in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go to our next match. Dan the Beast Severn defeats Savio Vega by submission in 1 minute and 36 seconds. Dan Severn looks a lot better with none of the NWA bullshit. Sans, Jim Cornette, all of it. He's best solo. And I didn't even get a chance to take notes on this because it was a quick one. So I will say, though, that I loved this. I love Severn's no bullshit technical ass kicking. And I love how his style, it just stands out against the rest of the locker room.
The rest of the catch can.
Yeah. It's ultimately, it doesn't work for him because he's not a big enough personality, but I just I love the fact that he is so subdued that subdued style stands out and makes him unique against everybody else there. And plus, I love the fact that he just looks like a fucking serial killer. Ryan, what'd you have on this match?
Not much of a match, and it was sad the moment I saw Savio in the ring waiting. Poor Savio.
And Savio Vega is our jobber of the week.
Yeah. He almost got it. I was very close. I didn't want to give it to him. I felt bad for poor Savio. It seems like we've used those two words together, poor Savio, so many times over the last year. He's finally done with Los Pericos, it looks like, but
yes, thank God.
Only to be put out to the meat grinder to get chewed up by the fucking beast. And one thing to point out, Dan, since he wasn't great on the mic, maybe he should have adopted a slower, almost like a Jake the Snake type delivery, where he could have went out there and talked quietly so his voice didn't get too squeaky and deliver his lines. But they didn't do that with him, and we're going to see in the coming weeks what happens with him. But good job, though, displaying him as a beast. He looked like it here, taking out the veteran Savio Vega.
Something tells me that making a delivery like Jake the Snake Roberts wouldn't have helped anything.
Oh, boy.
Dan the Beast just called in, folks. That was him.
There he is, the Beast. This is how you should have Dan Severn work, but to me, it's like the story's out of order. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
They've made him like this was the trained killer Dan Severn that JR has been telling us about, but like he's already had a few matches already and had a really good chance to squash somebody last week. They decided to go a different route. I actually have a little bit more information in today's news about that Jim Cornette, Dan Severn thing that happened last week.
Yeah.
So I'll share that later, but this was good. I just hope it's not too little too late for me as a fan watching Dan Severn.
Yeah, totally fair. So hopefully we get some more because like I said, he's unique. He stands out against pretty much the entire locker room.
Michael Cole better not be stealing that catch as catch can style.
Well, I think he already has.
He better not.
The Carlos Mencia of wrestling announcers. All right. Oh, and oh my God. Oh my God. The next segment started with a teaser that Jerry Lawler was going to interview Paul Bearer, and I thought to myself, holy shit, this is it.
The moment we've been waiting for.
So you have to picture this in your mind. It's like they were setting up, they were doing like the little promo, the pose for the interview coming up next. And then the camera stayed on as the cameraman set the camera down on the floor. We started to quote unquote break kayfabe to get behind the scenes to a candid discussion between Jerry Lawler and Paul Bearer. Jerry kept prompting Paul about nailing the Undertaker's mother.
Like, hide the baloney.
Paul spilled the beans, slipping the salami to Kane and the Undertaker's mama right there on the kitchen floor of the funeral home. This innocent 19-year-old boy losing his virginity, burying the baloney. She was moaning and a groaning and a screaming. You know what? I don't know that I can give it justice. Ryan, could you help me out a little bit with that?
I think I can.
She was a moaning and a groaning and a screaming.
Wow.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh shit. The little Undertaker almost caught them. Going at it. So after a commercial break, Jerry Lawler apologized for that conversation that was accidentally broadcast. That took me back to apologizing for, what was it? He hit
Duke the dumpster with the trash can. That's been a long time ago now.
He had that same sorry, not sorry smirk on his face whenever he was doing it. Oh, man. Things went downhill then as we got a replay of Sable challenging Mark Marrow in what is one of the worst stories ever told. It is so terrible, in fact, that we got a fucking training montage video. Plenty of emphasis on breasts throughout.
Yeah, melons popping out everywhere.
Get in the way of those preacher curls that she was doing.
And it looked downright painful with amounts to an extra 70 pounds flying around on her chest. That's basically half of her body weight.
Those whoppers.
But I tell you what, though, full credit to the trainers there at the WWF. It is amazing that they can enable this disproportionately top-heavy woman to defeat a 4-time New York Golden Glove state champion in 2 weeks. So, Joe, we finally got it. I guess I misremembered the rootin' and a gruntin', but still, this was still great to finally see, because I remember losing my shit as a kid, and I lost my shit just as much rewatching this as a 41-year-old man. So, what did you think about Paul Bearer's candid conversation and Sable's 80s training montage?
The candid conversation is just legendary. It is one of the best segments to ever air on Raw since the show started 5 years ago. This is just incredible. What a way to do it too, with the fake out, with the commercial break, and hopefully nobody switched the channel when that happened.
Right.
Hopefully they stayed on there and saw that. And then we get the Sable workout video, certainly a product of its time for sure. I was a moaning and a groaning and a screaming when I saw it. So they're trying to get her over as a real competitor, but like she has a solid, lean, muscular, almost bodybuilder type body, but she's a mannequin and not an athlete at all. So it's tough to watch her do anything competitive. She's like kicking the heavy bag and shit in that video.
She's not
athletic. Just like, she has no athleticism whatsoever. So it's not really fun to watch.
Yeah, but what was fun to watch was this fucking candid video backstage of Paul Bearer and King. I got to play it just one more time.
She was a moaning and a groaning and a screaming.
Just his delivery through this whole thing, the way he was playing it was like he was still a 19-year-old boy, just the way he was talking about it.
Locker room talk, as they say.
Yeah, this was straight up locker room talk. Hiding bologna, salami, fantastic. There's nothing more to say about it. If you haven't watched this episode, at least do yourself a favor, go back and watch this small segment. You could probably just find the YouTube video, but it's pretty great. From there, we moved on to the countdown to Mark Marrow's Jobberville visit. And that's what it was. It was just a quick montage of Sable working out with a big emphasis on her chest.
Yeah.
He's going to head on down to Jobberville and have himself a time.
Yeah. Well, whenever that montage was playing and she was like hitting the heavy bag, all I could think of is like some guy in a Russian accent saying, she hits at 0.4 pounds per square inch.
Simply put, anything she hits, she doesn't move.
Because it all looked weak. It looked so terrible. Every single strike.
Yep.
All right. Let's move it along to our next match. Double J, Jeff Jarrett with Tennessee Lee versus Mark Marrow ends in a no contest before it can begin. I was slightly concerned for Tennessee Lee during the introduction here. I thought maybe somebody ought to get him an inhaler or something.
What do you mean?
The greatest.
Sounds like, what's his name? Principal McVicker.
Oh, yeah. From Beavis and Butthead. But out of nowhere, Steve Blackman came in to attack Double J. That's what drew the no contest. And the attack was ongoing when we broke to commercial. So admittedly, we didn't get much here, but we got enough for me to send it over to our resident asshole for Tennessee Lee, Pennsylvania. Joe, what'd you think of this segment?
Well, I love Pennsylvania, and I loved this whole thing because it's Tennessee Lee, and ain't he great?
Yeah.
Yeah, seeing Tennessee Lee, that was great. And commentary let us know that Double J here is a new favorite in Nashville after his backup vocals with Soylent Brown, or whatever the fuck their name was.
Soylent.
Jesus, it's not made of people. What is it made out of? Shit.
And JR pointed out that the level of success for Double J has gone through the roof ever since teaming up with Tennessee Lee. So, Bartlett, it's hard to deny the difference he's made for Double J's career here. But yeah, non-match. We just get Blackman coming out and ruining everything. But at least we got to see Tennessee Lee.
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and I think that this match helped to prove my theory that Tennessee Lee is actually skimming a shit ton off of the top, because Double J is still sans light-up jacket, he's sans Tennessee stud, but now they have a cheap, repurposed Aldo Montoya pinwheel pyro gimmick. Man. to introduce Double J. So Tennessee Lee was skimping on that so that he could pocket the rest.
Well, that's what makes him a great promoter.
Ugh.
It's all about cash.
Scum. Absolute scum. Tennessee scum.
He's been trained by the best. Gary Sabaw taught him well.
Yeah, Don King was just there.
I do want to add, though, Joe, I really, really appreciate your love for the Commonwealth. Thank you for throwing that in there.
Of course, yeah.
God bless the Commonwealth. Friar Ferguson, bless the Commonwealth. All right. So next up, we got the PlayStation Slam of the Week, brought to us by Tekken 3. The Slam of the Week had to do with DOA, so fuck that. But man, I love the Tekken franchise. I don't know about you guys, if you guys got into that. I always preferred Heihachi and Yoshimitsu as my go-to characters.
Yoshimitsu is who I was pretty much always.
Yeah. I love Yamaguchi-san. I was always a Street Fighter kid. I never got into Tekken.
Well, guys, as much as I would love to keep talking about Tekken, we quickly went into our next match. D-Generation X. This is Billy Gunn, the Road Dogg, Triple H, and Chyna with X-Pac defeat the DOA and LOD2000 with Sonny by count-outs in 11 minutes.
Barely with Sonny.
Yeah, I was not excited about this. And with Jerry Lawler on commentary now, I guess that was the first segment of the second hour. We didn't get an official start and stop, but Jerry Lawler is generally what signifies second hour. So, I don't know. Sonny got kicked out right at the start, like you said. And when DX came out, JR was talking up how nice it was going to be to see X-Pac in the ring. And I was there with him. I was like, yeah, it's going to be great to see X-Pac in the ring. The referee then tried to kick Chyna out, but DX insisted that Chyna would be wrestling instead of X-Pac, which it was a shame because I was really excited to see X-Pac wrestle since they put him over so hard on commentary. Animal can still go pretty well here. He looked good for about 15 seconds going up against the Road Dogg. Chyna did finally get tagged in for a second. She got a Hurricane Rana in, so that was nice. So despite the excitement of Chyna and DX being in action, I tuned out on this one. It had so many things going against it, those being DOA, LOD, 8-man tag format, and honestly, it just ended up pathetic. DOA and LOD were fighting each other for some reason at the outside. Both of those teams were clearly out of gas while doing so.
After that 15 seconds that you mentioned.
Yeah, they were barely able to sell or work anything, and that's it. So, man, I hate saying that I didn't give a shit about a D-Generation X match, but here we are. I don't remember anything about this really, but if we wind up with an LOD versus DOA program out of this long term, I'm going to be changing the channel every time it comes up, especially if it ends up taking more time away from D-Generation X. So, Ryan, what'd you have on this shit show?
That's pretty much what it was. It was a shit show, bringing out the DOA and LOD, and they send out the one best thing about both of these teams combined, Sonny. They send her packing from the very beginning. It's like, the only nice thing about this is having her out there as a visual prop. I don't know, maybe them swerving us and getting Chyna in there. We haven't seen Chyna in the ring all that much, but they brought up that with her being in there, that this is WWF's first ever intergender match. And I'm scratching my head because I thought a few weeks ago, Matthew Knowles being defeated by Luna was the first ever intergender match.
We pretend things never happen.
First ever intergender 8-man tag, maybe.
Hopefully the last.
Yeah.
The one thing that did suck is it was clear none of these guys wanted to sell for Chyna.
Yeah.
Like, they wanted to make sure that they didn't look like anything she did hurt them. So that kind of sucked. It ruined her being in the ring. I understand X-Pac's probably still injured, but the only silver lining here is maybe with DOA and LOD fighting each other to close out, maybe they're just going to feud with each other and they're going to leave DX alone to allow them to move on to bigger and better things, and we could just change the channel when DOA is fighting LOD.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying there, Ryan. Like Sonny getting kicked out, she was a good reason to stay tuned into this, and then Kyoto kicks her out right away, and I'm wondering, like, why is this happening? And then it leads to the whole Chyna wrestling piece of it, which all I could think about was how much this probably triggered JR. China wrestling. She wants to wrestle the guys and make the same money. I didn't think China looked very good as far as her work, but she was getting pretty big crowd pops with just about everything she was doing. And I agree with you there too, with there's no way these guys were going to try to sell to her very much. So, I mean, it is what it is. I feel like they pulled the trigger a little too quick with getting China in the ring because this had no substance whatsoever.
Yeah.
I would rather see China in her first wrestling match with some sort of story behind it. But we didn't get that. We just got her in some random bullshit 8-man tag match, which may weaken her for a little bit. Maybe they should keep her out of the ring for a while after this. But the crowd seemed to enjoy it, so I think it worked fine.
Yeah, and not just a random bullshit match, but look who she's up against. The Nazi fuck brothers as hell are not going to be doing anything to assist women's rights, I'm sure. And LOD, say whatever else you can about them, but they are old school
I mean, they're Hall of Famers
guys
at this point, so yeah, they're not going
to
give up too much.
Yeah. So after a commercial break, we did come back to more backstage footage of the LOD and DOA fighting in the garage loading dock area.
Good.
I was so worried. What happened?
Still very clearly out of gas. But as before, we kept moving along quickly to our next match. Goldust versus Kane with Paul Bearer ends in a no contest in 1 minute and 52 seconds. I wasn't sure how to look at this match. It's nice to have Kane in singles action, but it's also nice to have Goldust in singles action too, but it's a minute 52, and just as one could have predicted, The Undertaker ran out to attack Paul Bearer, because Paul Bearer was...
She was a moaning and a groaning and a screaming.
Burying the baloney.
All right. Thank you, Ryan, for indulging me there. I loved the extra emphasis on the weeping, supposedly infected bandage on Kane's arm throughout all of this. That was a nice touch. And at one point during the pull apart, Commissioner Slaughter got punched in the face. So that was nice. And that's where this ended. Just shy of 2 minutes. We all knew where it was going. So, Joe, what'd you have for it?
Well, I think The Undertaker saved this because I felt that this match was boring as hell until Undertaker came out there. And also, I guess a little bit of a nitpicking dickbag thing on this fantastic soap opera that we've seen between Kane and Undertaker is that if they're doing this Daddy Paul angle, it's good, but why would Paul have desecrated the grave and the coffin of the mother of his child a couple weeks ago?
He's a cold-hearted bastard.
Yeah,
and maybe we'll find out. Maybe they'll put those pieces together. But I wonder if they're thinking of that as they were going through this story. Like, I wonder when they decided, let's make Paul Kane's dad. Like, I wonder if that was from the very beginning or not. That's just probably a question that'll never be answered, but just had me thinking.
This was odd. Goldust, he came out again, as I said last week, he's back to his old name, his old gimmick, but now he doesn't have Luna anymore either. So I don't know what happened to her, but he's just 100% back to old Goldust. At the beginning, I'm going to give JR some praise like we like to do. He says another one of these great one-liners for Kane. He calls him a 7-foot, 300-pound hellacious animal. And just love the different terms that JR comes up for Kane. But the match itself, it was forgettable. I was very close to giving Goldust Jobber of the Week, but he did give up a bit more of a fight than Barry Windham did, and I just like Goldust too much. I couldn't do that to him quite yet. He may end up having to take that on later, but other than that, this was just to set up The Undertaker coming out so we could extend the feud with the two brothers, which was still great, and I love seeing Paul weeping next to the ring. That was a beautiful sight, and then he lets out, "Damn you, Undertaker, that's my son!" Everything Paul Bear does is fantastic, and then we got to see the fucking worthless, neutered Slaughter get punched in the face. That was cherry on the top.
Yeah, and I do appreciate your discretion in not giving Goldust Jobber of the Week. It's fine decision-making like that has earned you the title of President of the Carpenters Union, so.
No, thank you.
So we got another Cineburst rewind back to when Cactus Jack or Mick Foley or who the fuck ever quit a couple weeks ago. And that was followed by a video package highlighting the entirety of Mick Foley's past, his friendship with Terry Funk. It was quite a lengthy package.
I was surprised at all of the Japanese footage from the death matches that they showed.
Yeah.
They showed a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of friendship there.
Yeah.
Friendship again.
My favorite line was Terry Funk saying, "I love him like a son, but I'll still beat him to death." So next up was another Val Venus video, and wouldn't you know it, my 17-year-old daughter walked into the room right as it was starting
Oh,
up.
God.
Perfect timing.
We just pretended like it didn't happen. Val Venus introduced his co-star here, Jenna Jameson.
Wow.
In her prime.
Yeah.
Actually, I take that back. I think I liked Jenna whenever she was just a teensy bit older.
Yeah, this was like right when she like hit mainstream because
Yeah,
Private
she was
Parts
like
was
just
like
starting to
97.
blow up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you got to give credit to Paul Heyman because ECW used her first for a while.
And I just want to reiterate here that in hindsight, Val Venus is creepy as hell. So
the end of that sound clip sounds like the King doing his high
It is.
pitched squeal.
That's why I
yeah.
had to leave that part in. The
like
king
the
going,
start of the
"Oh!"
squeal. Yeah.
So I guess Stone Cold Steve Austin's going to be with commentary for Terry Funk and Mick Foley's match. Austin came down to work the corners, and Austin made sure to get a bus tray full of Steveweisers from a vendor. And
Nice.
sat down with commentary. That's where I'm going to pause this. So I have to say, I'm nowhere near as engaged with this episode's story as I have been with past weeks. And it's not that I don't think Mick Foley versus Terry Funk in a hardcore match will be entertaining, although I do have some concerns about that. It's more that this almost feels like something we would have done like 7 months ago. This whole thing, the friendship, it gave me strong like boyhood dream friendship vibes. And going back to Mick and like his fight up from the bottom, and we even got the Dude Love jumping off the roof boyhood dream video too. And those concerns that I have about this match, I was really curious as to how a hardcore match was going to play out on the USA Network at a time where that wasn't common or accepted. I was really concerned that this was going to be pretty weak just to not piss off the network. So,
And you were probably concerned about the hot dog guy too.
actually wasn't, and I should have been.
He got it.
So Joe, what'd you have on this segment leading into the headlining match?
I think we were all concerned about the hot dog guy going into this. We knew he was in trouble. I just sensed it.
Yeah, you could smell the hot dog water in the air.
First, we get this friendship video, and I think that took me out of this.
Yeah.
Like you, I'm not going to be not excited about a Terry Funk Mick Foley match, but I just don't know if this was as well put together to get us excited for that match. But we can't forget who else is involved in this story and what they're going to do with it. So, yeah, I wasn't too excited going into it, but in the back of my mind, okay, well, Steve Austin and Mr. McMahon are involved in this story, so I'm going to give it a chance. We talked about Val Venus already. Steve Austin officially chugs his first beer on TV.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big moment there. So, man, USA Network is definitely loosening up a little bit for sure, week after week.
Yeah, I'm with you both on the Terry Funk Mick Foley montage. It just wasn't needed. We already knew their relationship. We already know the buildup for Foley. Not like Foley's been off our screens pretty much since he's came in. He's been on here consistently with one story or another, so we know him. The one thing, though, I really, really didn't like about the montage was towards the end of it, they come up to the cage match with Terry Funk and Mick Foley, and to fit the storyline, they pipe in or dub over the crowd chanting for Stone Cold, which we know didn't happen.
Yeah.
We remember Mick Foley came out, and that was one of the things he was bitching about initially when he first turned heel, so that just rubbed me the wrong way. And this video, I think, did the opposite of what they were hoping it was going to do for us. The Val Venus, Jenna Jameson thing, as Joe stated, we kind of already talked about it on its creepy nature, but great job for them, because this, you couldn't pick a better person to come in and put your porn star character over. She's basically the female version of Ron Jeremy minus the allegations. So yeah, that worked. And seeing Stone Cold take the first beer down the gusset or
Goozle gullet, one of those two.
Goozle gullet.
The gusset.
That was pretty great. But I wondered, it almost seemed like it was impromptu. Like he went up to the crowd and there was just one of those, get your beer here, guys, walking the crowd. And he grabbed the tray and started drinking. So maybe he was a plant, but if not, it's cool.
Yeah. Did you maybe just coin a phrase? Could we say maybe the gussy?
The gussy.
Write down the gussy.
Well, that'll be up to you.
Val Venus.
That'll be up to
Val
you.
Venus will use the gussy, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. He'll be putting stuff down the gussy.
Over and over.
Inch by inch. This was the worst movie title, Soldier of Love. I mean, they could have come up with something better there.
Yeah, especially for having Jenna there. They should have had something better for that. Although her final line was pretty great when she said, "Hey, let's go back down in the hole."
Yeah.
That was a pretty good line from her.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole friendship video just really threw it off, and they had done great just not talking about it basically the entire episode. They had maybe hinted at it here and there, like the upcoming match.
Rip us heart out, like that part, but that was good.
Yeah, but this video, it was like a full 10-minute video, and that was just way too much.
Maybe that was the problem. It was just put you to sleep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's go then into our final match of the night. Mick Foley defeats Terry Funk by pinfall in 16 minutes and 32 seconds in a no-holds-barred Falls Count Anywhere match with Pat Patterson as special guest referee.
Stooge number 2.
Building the Stooge stable.
So the appointment of Pat Patterson was a last-minute thing. Everybody in the situation was surprised when it was announced. So the guys in the ring, commentary, everybody was like, oh my God. They all pulled a Kevin Kelly on us. And it kind of seemed like my original concerns weren't warranted because this started off with Terry Funk wrapping a chair around Mick Foley's face. So there was that. But there ended up being some very artificial sounding interference on Stone Cold's headset. It kind of sounded like the electricity sound effects you'd hear in a Bugs Bunny cartoon coming through. Mm-hmm. After some attempts to resolve the issue, Stone Cold got frustrated and just drilled Jerry Lawler in the chin, accusing him of sabotage. So that was good. Austin got in JR's face too, yelling at him. And we know all of this because the camera was on Austin at the commentary table more than the match up to this point. And then I was beginning to see how they were going to get around the censors. You don't need to censor a match if you just don't fucking show it. That strategy continued up until Mick and Terry entered the crowd, and it kind of continued there because whatever they were doing really wasn't visible over the crowd. They finally got a good camera shot just as, oh my God, the hot dog guy just got it. By God, he got it again. I loved it. I popped my ass off, as I'm sure you guys do.
The hot dog guy was not a plant either.
No, not at all. With the bald head and the broad
just
shoulders,
like those
not at
beers. All. Yeah.
No.
And Brian was right. We should have known because we could smell the hot dog water in the air. For those of you out there that don't know, the area that we come from, very heavy on hot dog culture. Hot dogs are a very sacrosanct thing for us.
Our blood has more sodium than most.
So this was an especially important
we enjoy them
for us.
Inch by inch.
Right down the gussy. Sliding.
What's the new word for hot dogs? People call them glizzies. Don't people call hot dogs glizzies?
Yeah. No,
now?
fuck that.
Yeah.
No. If I have somebody calling a hot dog a glizzy to my face, I'm gonna fucking slap them.
Because it sounds like something that Val Venus would say. Hey, grab my glizzy, or let me squirt my glizzy on it.
Oh my!
No. Good God. No. No. Only uncouth pieces of shit would call a hot dog a glizzy. So
half of our audience, you just upset them.
Yeah,
well,
all
I
our
don't give a
Gen
shit.
Z listeners are going to unsubscribe.
I would like every member of the listening audience worldwide to know that if you say glizzy to my face, I will fucking slap you. So
With a glizzy.
With a glizzy.
you're both getting it. right in your gussy holes.
Glizzy down the gussy hole.
Jesus Christ, we need to get away from it. All right, so thankfully, those hot dog guys and Mick Foley, they were all able to get up and catch Terry Funk when Terry hit a moonsault off of the upper deck. That made 3 times that the hot dog guys got it. Afterwards, Terry was screaming to stop the match because of his neck. Mick's response to that was to pile drive Terry through a table. After a commercial break, we came back to the suggestion that both of these guys were going to end up at the hospital. I had flashbacks to the dumpster episode. I did love the very tense moment between Mick Foley and Steve Austin there at ringside, followed by Mick getting the pin in the ring. And after the 3 count, Mick was slamming Terry's face into the steel chair and yelling, "Oh, hell yeah," with every hit. Austin got up into the ring to take a beer to Mick, and by that we mean throwing it in Mick's face. Mick was blinded and reflexively put the mandible claw on Patterson. Patterson attempted to get Austin with a steel chair, but Austin saw it coming and gave Patterson a stunner instead. And just as things were starting to wind down, the Dude Love music started up, and Vince McMahon came out the entryway with those dudettes. Those dudettes from last week, and the Dude Love attire to congratulate Mick. Vince ended up dancing and doing the Charleston up there on top of the entryway with Mick.
Another famous scene.
And our final view was of Mick carrying the hottest dudette out on his shoulder as we faded to black. So, I wasn't that interested in the match. Not that I didn't enjoy parts of it, obviously, like we said before. And I'm not sure if that's because I wasn't really interested in a hardcore match necessarily, or if it was because my interest was being diverted with Austin. But for me, at least, with this episodic story, I greatly preferred the cappers to the story. Vince and Mick in opening promos, Vince and Mick dancing at the entryway at the end. The match in the middle, it was just meh for me. Again, not that it wasn't enjoyable in parts, but the cappers were much better, I thought. So Ryan, why don't you get us going on this final match and the way that Raw ended tonight?
For me, as much as the montage video earlier didn't do much to set it up for me, I thought for the most part it delivered. From the start, Stone Cold on commentary, he does a hell of a job.
Yes.
I guess it shouldn't be a surprise. You know, you put a mic in front of his face and he thrives, and he does on commentary as well. So that was pretty cool. And I enjoyed the hardcore nature of this match, even though we didn't really see any blood or anything. But
Mick did have it looked like
you're
he
right.
had the back of his head.
The back of his head, yeah. Mick, he took at the start of this 3 chair shots to the face before the chair deformed, and I thought it looked good, even though in the back of my mind I was thinking about some CTE, but back then they weren't worried about that, and by God, if it didn't look good on camera. The stuff they did in the crowd, it was entertaining enough, but the high mark was the hot dog guy getting it and JR saying that, "The hot dog guy just got it." Just the way he said it. He was just so surprised, and that was fantastic. The match, it could have been better. This wasn't the greatest match in the world, but I thought it delivered in bringing all of these pieces together. The match itself was serviceable, but you add Stone Cold, you add the ending with McMahon dancing with Foley and the groupies, and all of a sudden this becomes, to me, a great segment. I loved seeing Patterson get both guys' finisher. The fucking stooge got the mandible claw and the stunner. That's great. One of the best things to me, right under the hot dog guy getting it, is at the end when Mick is doing the Charleston with Vince, and you see Stone Cold's face, and he's making a motion he's trying to puke, but he couldn't fight back. The biggest fucking grin on his... He was just like, "I'm sorry, I can't help it. This is hilarious." And that's how we end things, is Stone Cold basically breaking kayfabe and laughing. I liked it. I liked everything about it. The match could have been better, though, I guess Yes, I could agree on that, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, just like a few bullet points for me in my notes here. I underappreciated is the Stone Cold Steve Austin character being so on edge, afraid of someone sabotaging him or a conspiracy. I really loved it when he was getting pissed off at JR, asking him if he was pressing a button back behind the table when his headset wasn't working. For some reason, I just thought that was hilarious. These 3 bullet points for me, everything was hilarious. Terry Funk twitching and seizing when he sells. I laugh out loud when that happens. I love it. And of course, Vince McMahon dancing at the end is just, my God, I could watch it over and over again, just like I could watch him take that chair to the dome over and over and laugh really hard every time, much like Stone Cold Steve Austin was doing at the end when he couldn't hold it in anymore.
Yeah, great shit. So speaking of, let's take it on over to highlights and lowlights. Joe, why don't you keep going with it?
I'll tell you what, there's a lot of great things that happen on this episode. We got that Edge vignette. We got the candid camera thing with Paul Bearer and the King. We got this Vince McMahon dancing at the... So many things that were so great. But those things I remember watching. So I'm going to go with a highlight for me is something I don't remember, and I fucking loved it, was that Jerry Briscoe video. So that's going to be my highlight. My low light is just DOA in general. Like they gotta go. They gotta go. This was a shitty 8-man tag match. We talked about how bad it was, but DOA for me in particular, they gotta go.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, of course, my low light is also DOA. And I wonder if we were to look back, how many times the DOA have been a low light for one of us.
Ooh.
I think it probably has overtaken Vader at this point.
And Billionaire Ted.
Yeah. But definitely low light. And my highlight, Joe, I agree. Lots of stuff to pick from tonight, but I'm going with the hot dog guy getting it. I laughed my ass off over that. I couldn't contain myself, so that's my highlight.
Yeah, that's a really good call because, again, where we come from, that's the equivalent of kicking a priest in Rome, attacking the hot dog guy.
Yeah.
Little sacrosanct. But I do agree with the lowlights here. DOA, more broadly, really, the 8-man tag match, because I don't want to dislike a DX segment. But DOA is the reason for that. And maybe we should reach out to YouTube listener 79 cents out of $1. We know he's back there in the catalog already, so maybe he can start keeping track of the amount of times that we call them as the low light.
I could take a guess what your highlight is.
Well, you would be surprised. I actually took Joe's approach to this because I've talked it up so much. And please, Ryan, one more time, if you would.
She was a moaning and a groaning and a screaming.
Oh man,
I've talked it up so much that that's just it's a given. So I didn't want to go with that because it's a given that I'm going to love that. So something that I didn't remember that I really, really enjoyed. So I ended up going with the opening promos from Vince and Mick. They were so well done. I fucking popped my ass off for both of their promos. That was some high quality story driving shit there, and I loved it.
So all three of us, even though this episode was filled with many memorable highlights, we all picked non-memorable ones.
Yeah,
definitely an episode worth rewatching over and over again if you're a big fan of the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Over and over.
Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around May 4th, 1998 for us?
I sure do. Speaking of a moaning and a groaning, there are rumors that the WWF wants Jerry Springer to come on to do a DNA test to reveal whether or not Paul is Kane's father.
I don't know if I like that.
That's what they want to happen. But word on the street is that Jerry Springer is slated as a possible guest for SummerSlam. So whether they do that angle or not, they are trying to get Jerry Springer to be involved in something down the road.
That really sounds like something that Vince Russo wants to happen.
It seems like it's making a bit too much of a joke out of the situation of two very serious characters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Moaning and a groaning and a
Moaning
screaming.
and a groaning, yeah.
Speaking of Vince Russo, bro, the Jim Cornette and Dan Severn angle last week was twofold, according to Dave Meltzer. There was a decision that was made to get Severn away from Cornette, and they wanted to injure Cornette to explain his absence for a few weeks because he's on vacation.
Oh, okay.
Now, the explanation for the Severn situation is that Vince Russo gave Vince McMahon a list of heels and faces, and the list on the heel side was weighing a lot heavier than the babyface side. So they decided that they were going to turn Dan Severn into babyface.
Balance the tables. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
So that's the word in the dirt sheets. There is talk of Mark Marrow introducing a new valet for next week's Raw to answer Wendy Whopper's challenge.
Excellent.
For his final match of his career.
Yeah. Ken Shamrock is expected back in time for the May 31st pay-per-view, so doesn't sound like he's going to miss too much time, even though his ankle was snapped.
Yeah, 2 bones.
Yeah.
2 bones. We mentioned Steven Regal before. He's coming into the WWF, but he's got a no-compete clause with WCW, and apparently WWF took that to court and appears to have won. So
Wow.
may see Steven Regal sooner than we think.
Okay.
Again, more on Vince Russo. He is no longer on magazine duty. He is really focused more on the TV side. So this is the time period where Vince Russo was more of a player on the TV writing, if you couldn't tell.
Right.
Earl Hebner, he was having some issues there for a while, and he was back at this show. He did not work at this show, but he was there,
Okay.
and they anticipate that he will be back in about a month. So he must be doing better. Club Kamikaze, Dave Meltzer is reporting they are going to have their name changed to Kaientai.
Okay,
Yeah.
there it is.
And they will have Yamaguchi-san as their manager. Again, my favorite Tekken 3 character.
When he goes up against Val Venus.
Last piece of news here is Goldust is going to be having his knee scoped, so he will likely be out of action for a few weeks. So at least he got some quality TV time before he has to take some time off here. And
Got to hit the pay window.
At least it was a match that revolved around him.
Yeah. And that is all this week.
All right. Well, thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and tell all of your friends to tune in to the most vile Monday Night Raw review podcast on the airwaves. Yeah, I couldn't believe I hadn't used that already.
Yeah.
Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on May 11th, 1998, with matches featuring Vader, Kaientai, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason. This has been Wrasslin Raw.